Well, the U.S. House of Representatives has voted to rescind U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods in a 219 to 211 vote. 6 Republican lawmakers joined the Democrats to get that through. It's a resolution that would see to end tariffs that Trump imposed on Canada last year. Joining us to sort it all out, the legal, the economic implications, some tax implications, Lachlan Wolfers, Global Head of Indirect Taxes and Global Head of Data for Tax and Legal at KPMG Canada. Lachlan, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Roger. Thank you.
I think there was some optimism about what happened yesterday, but is there any reality to what happened yesterday? Will it go anywhere?
At a surface level, Roger, I think people would look at this as being mere symbolism in the sense that President Trump does have a right of veto, even if this is passed ultimately by the House and the Senate. But I think the bigger picture issue here is actually what lies beyond this. And in particular, if the US Supreme Court finds that the IEEPA tariffs, they're the emergency tariffs that were imposed on Canada in response to the perceived fentanyl crisis, if they're found to be unconstitutional, then President Trump's response to that, beyond an initial period of 150 days, would likely require congressional approval. So what this really indicates here is that if those tariffs are found to be unconstitutional, for President Trump to reimpose those for the longer term, he may have some difficulty securing the support from his own Congress to do so. That's the first aspect. And I think the second aspect that we see is, as we head into the review of the CUSMA agreement towards the middle of this year, again, if there is a fundamental change to that agreement, that will require congressional approval as well. And I think what the US Congress is indicating is that perhaps going and imposing tariffs on their closest and nearest trade neighbours, being Canada, is not something that's being well received by lawmakers in the United States.
Especially when you see 6 Republicans knowing they're going to draw the wrath of Trump going against it. It says a lot about the pressure they must be feeling in their areas and where they are. I can't remember the name of their wards. I want to say wards, but not wards, where they represent.
So I think that's right, and I would expect as we move closer towards the midterm elections later this year, a couple of things are likely to happen. Firstly, you're more likely to see some of these congressional lawmakers make decisions on their own rather than necessarily following the party line because of obvious concern and pressure about re-election. And then I think the second component is that I think heading into the midterm elections, there's going to be a very real focus on ensuring within the US that tariffs are not unduly impacting the cost of living for your average American. So I think that pressure is only going to intensify as we head towards those midterm elections later this year.
Okay, let's do a couple of hypotheticals, put you on the spot here. What would happen if the Senate suddenly says yes to this, a 2/3 vote, Trump couldn't veto it, we know that's not going to happen. What kind of tax repercussions and legal repercussions would happen for Canadian companies that had been paying, or either Canadian and American companies that have been paying these tariffs?
Well, I think everyone's waiting. So firstly, these tariffs that are the subject of the decision, the congressional vote yesterday, concerned the IEEPA tariffs, the emergency tariffs, and not on the sectoral tariffs, those on steel and aluminum. Those IEEPA tariffs in form are quite high, but in substance, because of the exemptions that Canadians enjoy under the CUSMA agreement, roughly 85 to 90+% of products are not subject to those tariffs. So the first thing is to say that the true impact of this is not quite as profound, certainly, as we're seeing with the sectoral tariffs. But in direct answer to your question, if the tariffs are ultimately found to be unconstitutional by the US Supreme Court, there will be a flurry of refund claims that are lodged by businesses, and we've seen many of them take action to protect their refund rights in advance of that. My best guess, in the event they are found unconstitutional, there is a power that the president has to impose tariffs in substitution of up to 15% for 150 days. And then beyond that, President Trump would likely have to rely on the imposition of more sectoral tariffs or get congressional approval. And that's where the options start to narrow, not to mention that the 150 days that we're talking about probably leads you right into the middle of the midterm election period. So it's going to be more challenging. And I think if we stand back from this for a minute, I think this is informing the approach that Prime Minister Carney and the Canadian government's adopting to this, which is, in essence, we've got to stall for time. Time is our friend here. The longer this goes on, the more difficult it will be, not to mention the potential for the US administration to get distracted by some other crisis or some other decision from a tariff perspective, focusing on a country other than Canada.
Now, and with SCOTUS, we've been talking about this I think since probably the beginning of the year, that they could release today, and then today. Any indicators as to why it seems like they're holding off, or have they just not reached a final conclusion?
So I think the first thing is to recognise that the time period for a decision from the US Supreme Court is basically any time, I think it's from February 20th is the next date for a decision that could potentially be released, up and through to the middle of the year where they reached, the end of the current law term. This is a normal kind of time frame. What I would say is this, based on experience, is the longer we wait, the more likely it is that those tariffs could be held to be constitutionally valid by the US Supreme Court. The reason being is, if they had made their minds up to say it was unconstitutional, then you would typically expect them to release a decision more quickly because they're obviously aware the tariffs are still being collected in the meantime. So I think it's too early to judge which way it's going. This is a normal sort of time frame the US Supreme Court has. They only decide cases of importance to the American public.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it there. Lachlan, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much, Roger.
Cheers. Lachlan Wolfers is Global Head of Indirect Taxes and Global Head of Data for Tax and Legal at KPMG Canada.